Yo, what is up, everybody? Again, my name is Crancy Borsco. What's up? What's up? What's up? This is going to be chapter 2, reading of Your Speech Reveals Your Personality. Wonderful book here that we've been going over different parts. And so chapter 2, it's going to be a little heavy, man, a bit abstract. It's titled Symbols, the Building Blocks of Thought and Experience. Again, this is not my views. This is not something that I wrote. This is by the late Dr. Dominic A. Barbara. And this was published first published was in the in the 50s, 1958, and then the second printing was 1970. So, and this is the second printing. So this is not my views. This is not from this century even. So, it's just, there's some really cool, good insights. And I just want to share it. And plus, I just really want to finish a book, bro. It's been a long time since I've actually finished a book that I started. So without further ado, we're going to dive into chapter 2. Symbols, the building blocks of thought and experience. In the beginning of heaven and earth, there were no words. Words came out of the womb of matter. And whether a man dispassionately sees to the core of life or passionately sees the surface, the core and the surface are essentially the same. Words making them seem different only to express appearance. And that was a quote from Lao Tzu, The Way of Life. Interesting. You know, I'm not gonna, you can think what you want to think, because I definitely, I think it's deep, and not too sure if I really believe what I'm understanding there. But it's interesting. There's some, perspective there. Let's get it. Since Adam and Eve, man has wanted to share and communicate in terms of human relations with others like himself. To do so, man has had to develop a system of communication understandable not only to himself, but to those about him. It is in this sense that symbols first came into existence, and we had the beginning of a written and spoken language. The greatest of mental tools is the symbol. Without it, we could deal only directly with things. We read in Culliver's Travels how, in the School of Languages in Legato, it was advocated that the inhabitants abolish words and go back to things. The project failed because of the opposition of the women, who threatened to rebel if they were not allowed to use their tongues. That's funny. Such a scheme would perforce have involved a thing language, or something resembling that of the animal world. We as humans, because of our desire to communicate and relate to each other, must rely on a more elaborate system of signs and symbols. The human's closest approach to a thing language, or communication by signs, is picture writing. The American Indians, for instance, were experts in gesture and sign language. However, as people began to live more closely together and developed a greater capacity for thinking, and as our interpersonal relationships assumed greater complexities, the need for other means of communication simultaneously assumed greater importance. And as our vocabulary increased in size, so did our words, or the spoken symbols of things and ideas, become numerically greater. As the word symbols became increasingly important in communication, the spoken word proved itself enormously superior to any other type or order of symbol. And language as a substitute for a gesture language or picture writing has become one of man's greatest assets. The actual sounds of the spoken words in themselves are meaningless, arbitrary, not the same in any two languages, but as Joseph Jastrow once wrote, it is the word thus spoken that has the power to call upon the thing, the relation, the experience, the idea. One of the most important functions of thinking, therefore, is the symbol, which in essence substitutes a sign for a thing. A second function is the concept which leads to a general ideal, relation, or a part quality of a thing, and which proceeds by the process of abstraction. Neither need be presented in an orderly or systematic manner, but they are interrelated dynamically. A word, once it is thought of or spoken, becomes a concept. In this process, words do not refer to an individual object only, but to an object as representative of a class, and forthwith a concept is born. For example, you do not see the word horse, right? You don't see the word horse. Like in the generic sense, what you do see is a specific horse. Yet you have a more or less basic idea of the manner of beast a horse is. You may even think of donkeys, mules, zebras as horses of a sort. But your concept of the word makes a finer distinction. This involves the process of abstracting, or that of leaving out some of the finer details and characteristics from a total situation in experiencing. Although things are concrete in our thinking processes, we convert them into the abstract so that we may experience, understand, and relate to them more positively. Let us consider, writes Jastrow, a universal need of all animals, that of finding their way. When a dog tracks by scent, the process is wholly sensory. A carrier pigeon flies by noting points from one stage to the other. Rats find their way to the pantry and back to the nest by a complicated system of sensations. A child finding the way from home to school goes through much the same process, but when you send him on a new errand and tell him to turn to the right at a certain point, he has already a concept system of direction. Words are not just labels or proper names as the semanticists would have us believe. They have special connotations of their own. They have inherent meanings, volitional, intellectual, or emotional, for the person using the words at the time he speaks, and in reference to the listener and the thing or object referred to. These word systems also have an implied universal significance, for without such a system of order in social interaction, there could be no productive communication. At the same time, they can only be fully comprehended in the context in which they are used. For instance, if one sees a new streamlined automobile advertised on a television program, it assumes one image in proportion if we perceive it in terms of the person describing its marketing assets, another if we see it from front or back, from above or below, and still another if we see a pretty young model getting into the car and sitting at the wheel. This flexibility and dynamic interacting of word concepts is essential to thinking. However, if we define a symbol as something which stands for something else, we must then seek out the specific connection between the symbol and that for which it stands. In this, we must learn to differentiate between three kinds of symbols. These Eric Fromm has labeled the conventional, the accidental, and the universal. The first, in a sense, dealing directly with objective realities, while the other two expressing inner experiences as if they were sensory experiences. I'm just going to turn off something here. Sorry about that. The conventional symbol is best known to us because of its everyday usage. If we, for instance, see the word table or hear the sound table, the letters T-A-B-L-E or the sound table stand for something other than those symbols. In other words, semantically speaking, the symbol is not the thing symbolized. The word is not the thing, just as the map is not the territory it stands for. Yeah? The thing table has nothing to do with the sound table. And the only reason the word symbolizes the thing is the convention of calling a particular thing by a particular name. So it's like a symbol within a symbol. That's funny, right? Because we have this book. Like, this is the book. This is the book, right? And so, like, what is this? This is The book, B-O-K, B-O-O-K. But B-O-O-K has a sound to it, like a book. But then the sound of book has really nothing dealing with the word book beyond the fact that, it comes from it. But then even more, the sound book has nothing to do with the thing that the word book is symbolized for. And I think I made it more complicated than just symbols upon symbols, man. Helping us to connect with the actual, like with reality. This has a communicative value and establishes a sense of form and order in our language and thinking because it concretizes facts and didn't know that was a thing. Concretize. Concretize is a word. Wow. Concretizes facts and things and leads to suitable connections and lasting word associations. Words, however, are not the only conventional symbols, although they are the most frequent and best known ones. Pictures can also be conventional symbols. The American flag, for instance, stands for a specific country, yet there is no visible connection between its colors and the country for which it stands. We as a people have accepted it as symbolizing the United States, and we translate the visual impression of the flag into the concept of our country primarily on conventional grounds. There are still some pictorial symbols which are not entirely conventional. For example, the cross. The cross is a conventional symbol of the Christian church, and in that respect, no different from a flag, but the specific content of the cross with reference to the death of Christ or to our interpretation of certain material, spiritual planes puts the relationship between the actual symbol and what it symbolizes beyond the level of the mere conventional symbol. The very opposite of the conventional symbol is the accidental symbol. But there again, there is no intrinsic relationship between the symbol and that which it symbolizes. Let's assume that someone has a saddening or happy experience in a certain city, house, street, and with a specific person. Whenever he hears, sees, or thinks about that city, street, house, or person, he will spontaneously connect the name with the happening. It is this concept that makes the experience a symbol. In contrast to the conventional symbol, the accidental symbol remains personal to the individual and cannot be shared by anyone else except as we relate the events connected with the symbol. For this reason, accidental symbols are rarely used in myths, fairy tales, or any literary masterpiece because their meanings are not communicable unless the writer has added a lengthy comment explaining each symbol he uses. The universal symbol, on the other hand, is one in which there is intrinsic relationship between the symbol and that which it represents. So I have here notes because I read this chapter already some time ago. So I wrote here for the accidental symbol, inside joke. So like an inside joke type of thing. There's some type of connection between inside jokes and this and that. Universal symbols are primarily rooted in the experience of every human being. Take, for instance, the symbol of fire. And I quote here from Fromm's The Forgotten Language. This is going to be nice. We are fascinated by certain qualities of fire in a fireplace. First of all, by its aliveness. It changes continuously, it moves all the time, and yet there is constancy in it. It remains the same without being the same. It gives the impression of power, of energy, of grace and lightness. It is as if it were dancing and had an inexhaustible source of energy. When we use fire as a symbol, we describe the inner experience characterized by the same elements which we notice in the sensory experience of fire. The mood of energy, lightness, movement, grace, gaiety, sometimes one, sometimes another of these elements being predominant in the feeling. In our present, rapidly moving, complex, machine-like society, this is back in the 70s, y'all. Late 50s, right? First edition 58. That's crazy. It is not all surprising to find that there are many concepts and relations we cannot and do not understand, which we use in a mechanical, automatic, push-button-like manner, rarely stopping to question their value. We are too accustomed to using word symbols as though they were realities in themselves and to accepting them as the embodiment of thought. We have acquired a keen sense and fluency in handling words without a real grasp of their intrinsic meanings, and so miss the finer distinctions between one concept and another. We repeat words by rote and in a parrot-like manner. We add to our befuddlement and confusion by not comprehending what we are saying, and we accept distorted verbal fluency for productive or meaningful communication. I'm gonna read that again. We add to our befuddlement and confusion by not comprehending what we are saying. So it's not that, wow. Oftentimes, it's not what others say that we are confused by, but like what we say. Like what we say confuses us. And because of that disconnect right there, internal disconnect, we accept distorted verbal fluency for productive, meaningful communication. Wow. Only the thoughts, feelings, and experiences of man have been recorded in such a way that we can say that through the ages he has communicated with fellow human beings. To the best of our knowledge, man is the only creature on earth who has a symbol-creating faculty. As men emerged from the solitude of prehistoric void into the complexity of modern society, he of necessity had to resort to more and more symbols. His system of communication as a medium of relating to others now assumed such proportions that he was compelled to seek for more workable tools. Foremost amongst these was the development of the creation of general concepts called abstractions. The capacity for abstraction, the so-called abstract attitude, is directly connected with the individual's personality. With abstract concepts, man can take the memory of past experiences, relate them to the experiences of the present, and prognosticate what will happen in the future. The abstract attitude of man includes his capacity for making mental blueprints for intended actions, thus enabling him to plan ahead. With such an ability, he can adopt at will certain mental patterns he can adopt at will certain mental patterns needed for the execution of future moves. It also includes his ability to discriminate and to shift the patterns when needed, that is, to make a choice. Finally, the abstract attitude is the individual's capacity for distinguishing between the essential and non-essential aspects of a given situation, between reality and unreality, between figure and background, and finally between similarity and identity. Speech as a form of symbolic transformation gives meaning to the experiences of man. Speech has streamlined communication, made social interaction possible, and put to practical use the extremely varied experiences of mankind. Language interprets and reinterprets experience. It is projective, which is to say, coolio, I caught a typo. Which is to say that we use speech to describe events and experiences, to make statements about our experiences, and to give meaning and continuity to experience. In a sense,